Alrighty, this is Bighead and this is Farix. I have been asked a few times in the past month or so if I have any advice to give on people who are trying to get better. So I figured I would put a video together of kind of what I have done in the past and what I know other people have done in the past. And Farix and I have had really rather different journeys on our improvement as fighters. So here we are, how to get better at wacky bat fighting. So we're just gonna kind of launch into it. I think the big one, the easy to write off one, or the easy to throw out there one is just fight more. Right? Everyone says just fight people, you'll get better. Right? And there's a whole lot of truth to that. I mean, that is absolutely the simplest way of going about getting better at this game is find someone, preferably someone better than you, and fight against them as frequently as you possibly can while still enjoying your hobby. So, you know, if you have the ability to go out to your local park and find people better than you, just square up with them pretty frequently, see if they're willing to spar, see if they have any pointers for you, and understand the fact that what works for them won't inherently work for you, but that you can learn things from them at the very least on this is how other people have been successful at fighting. And if you can turn that into you becoming more successful at fighting, great. But that's sort of like the real low effort answer is fight people better than you. So we're going to kind of dive a little deeper into it and go into some other aspects about it. One of the concepts that I have heard a lot over the years is that what you should really do is fight single sword a lot. That if you fight a lot of single sword, that what you learn will be applicable to every other type of fighting that you do. So the more fighting you do with single sword, the better you are as a fighter. Now, I'm going to actually disagree here in that while for those of you who know me, I fight an enormous amount of single sword, and I really enjoy fighting single sword. I think that the best advice you can give someone is if you want to get better at fighting a specific style, fight that specific style. So if you want to get better at strap shield, get a strap shield, fight using a strap shield, fight against people with strap shields was a point that Ben had made when we were originally talking about this video. Like do stuff that makes you learn how to use your equipment and watch people using that equipment and ideally do both at the same time. So square up with people with strap shields. If they do something interesting, it's a game. Feel free to ask questions. Be like, you just killed me real hard, and I would like to know exactly how I died that badly. And learn that stuff and recognize that again, there are going to be some things that work for you and some things that don't.
And then even if you don't feel comfortable asking, just like go over it a few times in your head, like feel it out, like they throw some sick spin. Just try it. Like even if you have no idea how it works, just replicate what you see. Eventually, if you don't want to ask, like you will figure it out over time. Typically, asking is the fastest way, but if you want to just feel it out and do it yourself and come up with your own spin on it, you can do that too.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, again, kind of going into, like, not everything will work for you. Sometimes you will find that even if you ask directly, that you can't do the thing that your opponent is doing to kill you, but that you might be able to find, a version of it that does work for yourself. In fact, relatively recently, you and I had kind of a thing where you were showing several new people at a park a shot, and I wrote it off originally as like this doesn't work for my style of motions, my body type, and then I modified that shot into something that I was able to use. Told you about that, and then you immediately modified that and used it against me, and it was great time all around.
Yeah.
But that's all built off of me seeing something and going like that doesn't work for me, but you know what might work for me that's similar to that
Right.
is this other thing. But yeah, if you wanna fight flow, right? Don't practice single sword and then be like, now I have two single swords, because that might work for you, but it probably won't work for you as well as starting with flow and going now I've got two swords and I'm doing that. The one exception that I will make to this, and even this isn't a hard and fast rule, is that I generally tell people that beginner down spear is like intermediate single sword. It's one of those kind of peculiar things where down spear as a standalone style is real rough unless you're a credible threat with one sword. So it's a very tiny asterisk in a very large point of, if you want to get good at something, use that thing. So that is I think kind of important concept when talking, whether you're talking about fighting people better than you, as good as you, or worse than you, is to me, if you're wanting to enjoy the hobby that you're doing and also improve at what you're wanting to get better at, then do what you're having fun with and work directly what you want to get better at. So that is a very, very near and dear concept to me. Outside of that, I guess, segueing into what if you have people to fight but you are demonstrably better than them? How do you get better at that? Now this is one of those things. Honestly, I have very rarely played at parks where I didn't have very, very tough competition. So a lot of this is going to be a lot more theory for me. I know that there are people who have had a lot more experience with this, so I'm going to be kind of parroting what I've heard more than what I've seen myself. But even then, there are days when I show up and I have only less experienced fighters than myself to fight against for the first little bit. And if I want to improve at something, what I'm generally going to do is find a specific thing that I want to work on, whether that be a shot that I want to land. I want to land, sword side slot shots, right? So this is what I'm going to be doing. And if I'm better than this person, I'm going to be defending against their full gamut of how they're trying to kill me. But my shots that I'm trying to actually land are going to be sword side slot shots, right? Cool. Or hip shots, or stabs, or things like that. You kind of are taking the person and turning them into a living Pell that is attempting actively to not get hit by what you're trying to hit them with. But that's kind of the best thing for if you can't work on your fighting overall because of the skill gap between yourself and the opponents that you have to measure yourself against, then pick specific areas that if you hobble yourself by taking out large parts of your own, Rolodex O shots, that you will find that there are a variety of things that you can do to improve against even fighters that you are stronger than. So that's kind of what I've got there. I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that concept or not.
Yeah, I mean, the principle is the same, but in my mind, I always make a game of it. So, like, if you're keeping track of your wins, your losses in your head, or you're just, like, celebrating your wins or whatever, like, it doesn't count as a win unless I throw this shot behind my back and stab him in the belly button. It doesn't count as a win unless I take his right arm and then block 2 shots and then go for the other arm. It doesn't count unless I do like a backwards Michael Jackson moonwalk and then stab him backwards. Like, it's whatever you want to do. As stupid and as complicated as you want to make it. It's just setting goals for yourself, whether they're practical, impractical, you're working on those 90%ers or that 10%er. It's making a game of it and keeping it interesting for yourself is probably the key to that kind of particular kind of practice.
Yeah, and one of the big things there is something that I hopefully am going to mention a number of times throughout this video. Like, this is a game, this is a hobby. So if you are doing practice that you are actively not enjoying, maybe rethink exactly how you're approaching your hobby and find out if there's a better way for you to go about enjoying your downtime, because that's really what we're trying to do here. Now, you and I have also talked at great length and in various times about part of the concept there, which is a lot of people view like getting better at fighting as something that has to be taken very seriously. And as people who have watched through our fighting videos or ever been sparring with us will be able to know pretty quickly, is that you and I personally fight each other a great deal, but we don't take it seriously. We goof off and get ourselves into weird situations. And this, I think, is actually one of the keys to my improvement over the past couple of years that we've been regular sparring partners, is that if you're only fighting within like the same sort of set motions that you're wanting to do, when someone comes at you with something completely different, a lot of times it phases fighters that are only used to fighting in very, very specific ways. So, you and I will generally start off kind of relaxed, build up in intensity, and then just kind of bust out into what you could think of as real dumb. And it's one of those things that I know that I have been in a number of situations. You all right there, John? I know that I have been in a number of situations where I am aware that I walked away with a win because I was able to respond very quickly to something that was outside of my realm of normal, because I very rarely, or because we so rarely confine ourselves to the realm of normal when we're fighting. So when you do find a sparring partner, whether they're better than you, worse than you, or about the same, make some time to just goof off and throw weird things at the wall, because sometimes you'll find that stuff sticks. And sometimes it's uncomfortable where you're like, this works and it should really not work. I know that you and I have had fights afterwards where we both kind of stopped and like, neither of us should have done any of what happened there, but it worked for both of us, and now I'm uncomfortable. Uh, these are important concepts, both for increasing your adaptability within a fight and also your enjoyment level while practicing. I think that both those are really, really big deals.
And if you want to fight like an anime character, like that's the kind of practice you need to be doing, not gonna lie. Like if you want to do your ridiculous spins, you want to do your jump shots, you want to do your behind the head, back wraps as you pass them, like that's the time to play with that stuff, because that's exactly what the other person's going to be thinking about too. So there's a little bit of an open playing field as far as like you're not just going to immediately walk in and get stabbed by running into their sword, because there's a little bit of give and take, because the other person is responding to what you're doing and then you're responding to what they're doing. It's kind of hard to explain, but like once you get into that kind of playful mindset, it's a lot less of how can I kill them in the most effective way possible, and you both kind of come to this point where you're like, okay, I want to make this. This is style points. Like I want to get
Yes.
my kick flip, heel flip, upside down 360 combo, and I only want that basically. So it's just a lot of fun, and you come up with a lot of silly shit that shouldn't work that way.
Yeah, and that's something that you can also do, like on a good mindset ditch field. You can do that relatively easily. Like, for those who have seen me fight, it's not that uncommon for me to bust out into my Rurouni Kenshin stance and stuff like that. And the fact of the matter is that like that works for me, not because that stance is inherently powerful and I've tapped into the power of the gods, but because I goofed off with that for like literally years. And I got to the point that I had about as much experience goofing off with that stance as most of my opponents that I was running across had experience fighting seriously. And you can do all sorts of wild stuff, and you will find absolutely that there are concepts you pick up while goofing off that apply to your serious fighting. And there are all sorts of things that I do with my fighting that I picked up while going through my anime stances and things like that, and just having fun with things that I can then apply to killing talented opponents who are fighting seriously. And they don't necessarily have to know that, because I don't have to go into anime stuff to do it, but the concepts are going to be the same whether you're in the stance or whether you're using some of those motions. So I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else to say about like practicing with people. So we're about to go into territory that is outside of my purview as someone who kind of hates drilling, and go into what happens if you don't have a person to practice with at all. So if you want to take it from here, and I'll kind of chime in if I have something relevant to add.
Fair enough. So before I do anything like this, like if you're looking for a scientific breakdown, if you're looking for drills to run, there are numerous sports science like research papers, books, things like that. I don't have a list on me, but maybe we can put it in the comments or something. Just as far as like drills and things to improve your footwork, your mobility, like there are multiple resources for this. I'm just gonna kind of breeze over the surface level of like this game in particular, what you can do to either keep yourself warm when you don't have an opponent, like in the winter or something, let's say, or if you are new to an area, don't know people, so just some things you can do to kind of make sure your body is ready for the combat and ready to go back into the field and everything. And then also look up Mike Tato and look at anything that says the word Pell in it. That would be a good resource as well. So honestly, with Pell work, I don't typically do it in the way that most people traditionally consider Pell work. So you have your 1 to 6s. I don't even know what a 1 to 6 is anymore. But like, so you got I'm gonna throw this 50 times with my right hand, 50 times with my left hand, or whatever combo, shoulder, shoulder, hip, hip, stab, whatever it is. Typically, the way that I Pell is I pick a shot that I want to throw, and I will practice it lunging. So I'll start back, and then I'll lunge in and throw that shot. And then as my Pell is a pole with no arms or anything in the basement.
Take a pause for a second. I wanna align to your feet a little bit more,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Appreciate you, John.
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks
John is
for.
our cameraman because he doesn't have guard right now.
I'm just a muggle. Okay, go back to your lunge.
Okay. So my Pell is just a pole, like a support beam in the basement. Excellent impression. So I have the ability to go all the way around it. So when I throw my lunge, I'm going to lunge in, throw it straight, and then lunge back out, keeping my guard up. And then I'm going to lunge back in, throw it, lunge back out, and I'm going to move right, and then I'll move left, same thing, back up to the left, back up to the left, go all the way around, basically. And
so going off at like a 30-degree angle from where you
yeah,
started?
yeah. So you're just making a triangle, and you're going to go all the way around it, and then the same
Triangles,
thing,
huh?
Mostly with like hip wraps and things you would throw off board side. So it's just practicing that step as you're throwing as you go around. And then it's a lot of things like that. So you can practice step throwing as you step, like timing your strike to hit when your foot hits the ground. You can throw it and then put your foot on the ground. You can practice that in a whole lot of different ways. And you're getting your footwork in, which is just the repetitive steps that you're going to be taking when you're fighting anyway. So you're getting your body used to that kind of push and pull, back and forth momentum that you're building up as you're fighting anyway. And like I said, you can do it with like any shot, any step. So like I can throw high cross and reverse my feet, and then back up, and then high cross, reverse my feet. And you can practice switching stance, practice lunging, practice stepping, right or left, back or forward, whatever you want to do. But it kind of combines footwork drills and whatever kind of pelling you want to do, and that is the right amount of stimulation for me that keeps it interesting. So that is mostly what I do on my own, as well as just yoga, general fitness as best I can with the time I have. And then I think that's pretty much it. That's my 2 cents that I've been doing recently when I don't have anything. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess the last thing that I do want to throw out there is, given ideal circumstances, don't just find the best person in your area and fight them. I mean, honestly, bringing John up as a topic of conversation got me kind of thinking about this. Turek, our intrepid cameraman, has made kind of extraordinary strides with his fighting over the past year or so. And I think a significant portion of that is that he has opponents who would generally be termed better than him, but who have incredibly different styles. So that he's not fighting. I think a lot of times if you fight against one person who's better than you, you get better at fighting that person.
Oh yeah.
And you can relatively easily get yourself locked into a situation where you are better at surviving or killing a person who's using that sort of fighting style, but may struggle more against people who are outside of that fighting style. So if you have opponents in an area where someone is a long distance reach type fighter who will strike and disengage, and then you have a person who, kind of regardless of the situation, wants to be a point blank and avoid body contact if possible, and fighting from there. Kind of bounce back and forth between the two,
Yeah.
Which does remind me of another thing we talked about before we had started filming, which is the idea of, if you have a theory that you're really fond of with fighting,
Yeah.
a style that you're very, very fond of, don't learn that and then try to fit everything into that box. because if you only fight block strike, you will get really good at block strike. But when you find someone that doesn't participate in that style of fighting, or God forbid, someone who has a deeper understanding of that style of fighting than you do, both of those are absolutely recipes for disaster if you keep yourself confined to a single box of this is the type of fighting that I do. Get yourself to be adaptable and broad ranging by understanding that there are absolutely a number of different concepts for fighting, and each of them we're going to have valid points, and find what suits you best, not what you've seen work best for other people and you want to force that to work best for you.
Right.
So like, you know, to that point, just don't sit there and go like, well, I just came across this theory of fighting and that is obviously the best way of fighting and thus that's what I'm going to do from now on, because that very likely can do a lot for you, but someone else's fighting style will pretty much never do everything for you.
Right.
Pick up what you can and use, be open to other things. Recognize the fact that that is not the end-all be-all of fighting, except for in very, very specific situations where it might be dominant. You know, I, as the long-range strike and disengage fighter, I'm well aware of what my weaknesses are, and I'm well aware of how people can beat me, and a lot of it becomes how to prevent people from successfully using that against me. But, you know, there are absolutely things I run across, I'm like, man, that person is way better than me at this type of thing. So, you know, instead of saying that all of my fighting styles should be around one style, I need to be able to adapt myself to different situations, because there are sometimes someone won't let me disengage. And if they won't let me disengage, I have two options, which is either be able to do something other than disengage, or die. And given those sets of circumstances, I really very much like getting enough out of my fighting to be able to do the former. You know, that I'm going to disengage when possible, and when not possible, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to kill that person.
This is kind of walking back just a little bit in the conversation, but kind of what Bighead was just talking about is more of like a 201 kind of subject. Because when you're at 101, like, you're very obviously going to listen to the person who's telling you keep your hand in front of your body. You know, when he swings, you want to generally block without moving all of your body to one side or the other. You don't want to lean too forward too much. Like, there are definitely do's and don'ts and rules that you should not break as you are coming into your own and finding your own style and finding what works for you. That being said, especially when we're talking about with goofing off and, you know, moving forward, finding what does work for you and what doesn't work for you, as long as you know those rules and you are familiar with them physically and mentally, break the rules. Like, just figure, like, as you're figuring things out, like so typically when you're fighting, when you have new people out, you tell them not to lift their back foot up and like lean, but some of my lunges, it's my profile picture on Facebook right now, but it's me coming in like this and landing stab, not a backhand, but a stab like that. So, like, obviously I can make it work for me in the right situation. And I mean, that just comes from goofing off and trying to lunge a lot further than I'm technically physically able to. So.
And having a playful mindset where at the end of the day, you had a good time with it, not necessarily banking on the outcome of that. And oftentimes the outcome lends in your favor and it's unexpected. I think both of you are very good examples of understanding the fundamentals and deciding that that's not the game you guys are going to play. And adapting yourselves to that.
Now, as both of us are deeply uncomfortable with comments, with compliments, I think we'll end it here. So, yeah, honestly, if you wanna.
Sure. Yeah, we're at just under 25 minutes here.
Hopefully, the video helps, and yeah.
For the fundamental information, Farix had mentioned he was going to link some stuff in the comments. Make sure to check some of that out, because there really is a wealth of knowledge in some of the playlists that he has compiled over the years. Some of the basic fundamentals from those have intrinsically affected my own fighting, and I've seen that in play in each of these guys. And it helps to understand what other opponents' playbooks are to be able to know how to counter those. Anyway,
And a lot of that stuff that I'll put in there will be that 101 level. Like, this is the right way to do it, and that'll be very much the terms they're talking in. So just keep that in mind as you're watching it, especially if you watch this video first, that you are taking ideas from that. You're not necessarily following that code of logic all the time.
Yep.
thanks, guys. That's Warlord Bighead and Warlord Farix. Thank you all very much for your time.